come on in. I see. It's hard to look back here with this door not closed. That one right here in the back, it just that sun shining through or shining in the. Good morning. I think I'm all right. Nobody's told me any different. She's down there, so she hadn't told me. I said, Dee Dee's down there, so she hadn't told me if I'm okay or not. I don't know. We'll see. Let's see how quiet we can be. Shh, shh, shh. You need to face the front. You need to face the front. We had a conversation the other day. Don't worry. Don't worry, Philip. Well, you never know. We are in Ecclesiastes, the 7th chapter. Ecclesiastes, the 7th chapter. A good name is better than fine perfume, and the day of death better than the day of birth. What's in a name? What? Who makes of it? A good name is better than fine. A good name. Reputation. Is a good name something you inherit? Yeah. Sometimes. Sometimes you inherit a good name. And then what?
Well, I always like to tell about Daddy. I went to Austin after some stuff and they didn't have it at the store where we had a charge account. They said, try this new store. And I go over there. I know I don't have a check. I don't have the money. I don't have a charge account or whatever set up with them. I go over there. I tell them I need to speak to the owner. This guy comes out and I introduce myself. He said, you kindle those Kill brothers and burn it. Talking about the Clyde and Clint.
Mm-hmm.
I said, yeah, one's my dad, one's my uncle. He turns to the salesman and said, give him anything he wants. Just because of that. He worked on the ceiling. Daddy had a school job.
So a good name means something, right? Yeah. Do you have to inherit a good name to have a good name? So who determines whether or not you have a good name or not? You do. You do. A good name. I had some stories, but I'm not going there. Because sometimes we try to use a good name and do something that maybe not so good with it. Well, so you ought to do this. Kind of iffy on whether or not you're going to continue with that good name, isn't it? So, the day of death better than the day of birth. Does that sound right? The day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth?
If you live a good life, the day of your death will help seal you to heaven. You're good. But the day of your birth, you still can make all the poor choices that will keep you from heaven.
That's right.
Oh, so had a new baby. That's all you know.
That's right. That's right. That's it. You had a new baby. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For death is the destiny of everyone, And the living should take this to heart. Frustration is better than laughter, because a sad face is good for the heart. The heart of a wise man is in the house of mourning, but the heart of the fool is in the house of pleasure. Where had you rather go? Had you rather go to a funeral? Or had you rather go somewhere where there was a lot of laughter and joy and fun times going on? And this is just human nature. I mean, I'm not trying to pry into anybody's business. But human nature says, for me, and I'll only speak for me, I'd really rather go where things are a little more upbeat than to go where everything is sad. A funeral does not have to be sad. Okay, and that is true, but what does this say? In the house of mourning. You know, mourning, usually when you say mourning, you usually don't put a happy connotation to that. Usually. Now, that's not to say that in certain people's life, it goes back to that day of one's death is better than the day of one's birth. Because their life has reflected a life of Christ, a life of God. And it can be a celebration. But for the most part, when do we think more about our eternal state? Do we think more about our eternal state in the house of mourning or in the house of laughter? In the house of mourning. When should we be thinking of our eternal state? Did I hear all the time? I'm pretty sure I did, but I couldn't exactly see who said it. But there was... Do we do that? I'm not necessarily sure about that. For yourself, that may be true. But sometimes we just live life. Don't really think about, I'm doing evil. Don't really think about, I'm doing good. We just, every day we get up, we get dressed, we go to work, we do our thing, we come home, we get up the next morning, we get up, we get dressed, we go to work, we come home. And the next day we do the same thing, and we do the same thing over and over and over again. And it is just what we do. Do we really think about our heavenly state? And in that, do we think of others? Do we think of all the things that we should be doing for God? And why are we going? We said this the other day, and why are we going to work? Is it so I can feel better about myself? Is it so I can improve myself and so I can just be better and I can get more and I can gain more? Those are just questions. They're questions. What have I done? What am I doing day to day that puts me in a place where my eternal state and my eternal life is in a better situation? It is better, it is better to heed the rebuke of a wise person than to listen to the songs of fools. Like the crackling of thorns under the pot, so is the laughter of fools. This too is meaningless. Do we like it when somebody kind of corrects us a little bit? Or do we like it more when people say, oh yeah, man, you're right on, right on. You bet, all right, you bet. Everybody likes it. Everybody likes it when somebody says, "Oh yeah, you're doing good. You're doing good. You're doing great. You're doing great. It's great." What's the thorn crackling under the pot? The thorn, it says right here, like the crackling of thorns under the pot. See, we don't know much about that, do we? Well, I mean, how many of us cook on wood? How many of us cook on wood out in the open? Oh, got one. So if you put some thorns underneath your pot, is it going to really make your pot boil? Do what? It's going to burn very hot. It's going to pop. It's going to be gone. It doesn't stay. It doesn't stick with you. It's useless. In a way, it's really useless. If that's all you use for your heat, it just doesn't have much stability there. Extortion turns a wise person to a fool, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Extortion turns a wise person into a fool. How so?
God says, surely oppression drives the
Wise into madness. Madness being like a fool. I don't know. Mine says extortion. Yours says what? Oppression. Okay. Making him do something that he doesn't want to do, which is kind of the same thing as extortion. You're trying to make somebody do something that they don't want to do. So, a bribe corrupts the heart. It's easy to be taken in sometimes, isn't it? If you don't keep your guard up all the time, it's easy to be taken in. And it's...
There's a hard line between being guarded and have your locked up, but still being soft and open to receive others. That's a real hard line.
It's a hard line. The end of a matter is better than the beginning, and patience is better than pride. So we talked about that a little bit ago. Well, which is better, the day of the birth or the day of one's death? The end of a matter is better than its beginning. Which is better, to have a dream? Something. Let's say you wanted to build a house. Which is better, to have that house in your mind, or to be walking inside of it once it's finished? I mean, because if you don't put your mind to that work, you will never get it done. And just to think about it all the time, it's kind of like, it's kind of like thinking about the lottery. I can think about the lottery. I can think about all the money I'd have and how much good I could do with all that money. I could do a lot. But what do I do with what I have? So patience is better than pride. Sometimes we don't need to say something about everything. Sometimes
I don't know why you're looking over me. We all
it wasn't intentional, but if it worked, hey. Patience. Do we ever have trouble with patience? All the time. Well, I'm not saying y'all do. I'm just saying I do. I have lots of trouble with patience. When I wanted to leave this morning at 9:05 and it was 9:06, I was not happy.
Your daughter's safe. What can I
Well, that's good. I'm just saying, sometimes we just need to have a little bit more patience and not take so much pride in everything that we do. Do not be quickly provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. Do not say, where are the days? Why were the old days better than these? For this is not wise to ask such things or such questions. Have you ever said, "Oh, I wish we had the good old days back"? No? Nobody's ever said that? Yeah. The thing about it is we can't change it. We can't change that the good old days were better or seemed to be better. But you know what else we can't change? We can't change the good old days that were before. And you know what else we can't change? We can't change the days that are coming ahead. We can't change the future. Do you know what the future holds?
But we can't accept it.
We can't accept it. But do we know what the future holds? We don't. We don't. We'll get into that a little more in a minute. But
You know, we have our insurance, so that in the future, if something happens, we have our, like, I don't know, I mean, it's not wrong to plan and work towards the future. So even though we can't change it, we can still do our part to plan for it,
Mhm.
work towards it.
but we can't change it.
Well, I don't know, because whatever you do today affects tomorrow. And if you go to school and get a good education, then your tomorrow's gonna be different, and if you decide to not go to school.
And what if you go to school and then you have a car wreck and you can't teach? That's what I'm saying.
Some things you can't change,
That's what I'm.
not everything.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we can't plan and we can't, and that's what Dee Dee was saying. It's not that we can't plan and try to fulfill some things, but we have no control over it. We have no control over our life other than what we do.
You do it through experience, and you know if you do something now, it's either gonna be something good or something bad, or you better not do it, or it's okay to do it, or whatever, so.
Yeah, I've learned that if you spend all of your money at the first of the month, you don't have any money at the end of the month. I have learned that, and I learned that through experience. How did you know? Wisdom, like an inheritance, is good and benefits those who see the sun. So who does the inheritance benefit? The ones that receive it, who are still under the sun, alive, still alive. Okay. Wisdom is a shelter, as money is a shelter. But the advantage of knowledge is this: wisdom preserves those who have it. How is wisdom a shelter? How's wisdom a shelter? Just like you said, you learn knowledge. And now I know. Hold some of that money back. If you touch a hot pot, it's going to burn your fingers. How's money a shelter? Isn't there such? Go ahead. How is the money a shelter? It shows us some security. Security. You know, we're not worrying about our next meal. Wisdom tells us how we can do things that we don't worry about our next meal. Money is how we're not going to miss our next meal. We live. It's sheltered. It shelters us. If you have enough money, you can be sheltered from a lot of things. You can be sheltered from the law. You can be sheltered from a lot of things. But is money the answer to life? No. Consider what God has done. Who can straighten what He has made crooked? And when times are good, be happy. But when times are bad, consider this. God has made one as well as the other. Therefore, no one can discover anything about their future. So that's kind of back to where we were just a few minutes ago, isn't it? What can we do? What can we do to see our future?
Reside with the Lord. It's the best way of ensuring your future would be siding up next to Jesus, I would think.
This is true, but we don't get to decide our future. Now, we can decide how we're going to act and how we're going to be and what we're going to do, but we don't get to decide whether or not some random guy is going to come in here with a gun and shoot us all. We don't get to decide whether or not we're going to have a wreck. We don't get to decide whether we're going to have a train wreck. We don't get to decide. We don't get to decide when the day of our birth was, and we don't get to decide the day of our death. We don't get to decide that.
But we do
But we
decide
have to will.
if we're prepared of any of those events.
This is true, but just remember, we're talking about Solomon giving us words of wisdom, words of things that, hey, what is it? What is it? What is life about? What is it, what is life about? And what it's not about is us being able to tell the future. And what it's not about is us being able to determine when we're born or when we die. We don't get to do that. Somebody else is in control. Something else is in control. I lost my place. Okay, 15. And this is meaningless. In this meaningless life of mine, I have seen both of these: the righteous perishing in their righteousness, and the wicked living long in their wickedness. Do not be over righteous, neither be over wise. Why destroy yourself? Do not be over wicked. Do not be a fool. Why die before your time? It is good to grasp one and not let go of the other. Whoever fears God will avoid all extremes. Ernie, have you ever heard the phrase, all things in moderation? Do you think that applies to Christian life? No?
Well, I mean, what do you mean, Will? Like, in my stance in the church and so forth like that, I can be halfway. But moderation, you should live that way with everything so that you're walking with Christ with moderation.
Okay.
Because we are all sinful. We will sin. It's
That's right.
forgiven. We're going to sin, so I guess moderation is the way to go. I don't know how
Did you have any, do you want to expound on that any? Okay, so you're saying not limit what we do in the church, but there is some we can be over righteous. Kind of like the Pharisees. Kind of like the Pharisees.
What the saying is, be so right or wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Right. So right, you're wrong. That's right. That's right. Can we be over righteous? Can we
Be self-righteous.
that's what I'm saying. Can we not think more highly of ourselves than what we ought? Moderation. How do we live our lives? How do we live our lives? Is every minute of every day, of every second, do we live serving God? Should be our goal. But if we spend every minute of every day, and yes, we can do this, but how do we do it? Well, first of all, we have to be able to, if we're going to be one of God's workmen, we're going to have to do what? First of all, we're going to have to take care of ourselves so that we can work. So we're going to have a what? Some kind of a job or some way to support ourselves. So now I can't spend every minute of every day here because I have other things that I have to do to make sure that I'm doing what here says.
And that's where I like Matthew 22, 36 through 40, when they asked Jesus what's the greatest commandment. And that's the Lord your God, and all your heart, soul, and mind.
Love your neighbor as yourself.
And if you work at that, everything falls into place.
That's right.
And also it says, when you're working, to work is unto the Lord.
That's right.
So if you're working with that in mind, then you're worshiping God in your work.
That's right. And that's where I'm saying you can live a life, but in that life, you can't say, well, all I'm going to do is this one thing. I can't, because in living that life for God, it entails a lot of things.
Romans 8:31, if God is for us, who can be against us?
I'm sorry.
If God is for us, who can be against us?
If God is for us, who can be against us? And that's eventually going to be the whole the whole thing of this whole chapter or this whole book. Wisdom makes one wise person more powerful than 10 rulers in a city. Indeed, there is no one on earth who is righteous, no one who does what is right and never sins. I don't think I need to expound on that. Does anybody here think that they've never sinned? Okay, we move on. Do not pay attention to every word people say, or you will hear your servant curse you. For you know in your heart that many times you yourself have cursed others. True? Not true? True. I worked for the state. I started out as the lowest tech in the maintenance department. And at times I had some few choice words for the boss because I thought what they were doing was not very smart. Then I became the boss. And from time to time, you could overhear people thinking that what you were doing not very smart. I mean, that's human nature. Human nature. All this I tested by wisdom, and I said, I'm determined to be wise. But this is beyond me. Whatever exists is far off and is most profound. Who can discover it? So I turn my mind to understanding and to investigate and to search out wisdom in the scheme of things and to understand the stupidity of wickedness and the madness of folly. I find more bitter than death, bitter than death, not better, bitter than death, the woman who is a snare, whose heart is a trap, and whose hands are chained. The man who pleases God will escape her, but the sinner she will ensnare. So all women are bad and just a few men are okay, right? I'm just back what the Bible says. What is the woman? Who's the woman here? Who's the woman?
It's anything. Yes, they're using the, but I mean, really, isn't it anything that we allow?
The stupidity of wickedness and the madness of folly. The woman is the world. And the man here is mankind. I read a commentary on it, and it said, you know who Solomon's great-grandmother, I think it was great-grandmother? Do you know who that was? The whole book about her. Ruth, who was a Moabite, but she was very devout. She was very. Do you think that Solomon would say that? Well, I guess I need to get on down here. Said, look, says the teacher, this is what I've discovered. Adding one thing to another and discovering the shame of things, while I was still searching, but not finding, I found one upright man among 1,000, but not one upright woman among them all. This only have I found. God's created mankind upright, but they have gone in search of many schemes. Do you think that Solomon would have said in all the women that he knows there wasn't an upright one when his grandmother was Ruth? No. Folly, wickedness is the woman, and man is mankind. You can either know God and escape that wickedness and madness and folly, or you can not know God and be ensnared in her trap. Who is like the wise? Who knows the explanation of things? A person's wisdom brightens their face and changes its hard appearance. Obey the king's command. I say, because you took an oath before God, do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. Do not stand up for a bad cause, for he will do whatever he pleases. Since a king's word is supreme, you can say to him, who can say to him, what are you doing? Whoever obeys his commandments will come to no harm. But the wise heart knows the proper time and procedure. For there is a proper time and a proper procedure for every matter, though a person may be weighted down by misery. Since no one knows the future, who can tell someone else what is to come? As no one has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has power over the time of their death. So as no one is discharged in a time of war, so wickedness will not release those who practice it. if you obey the king, do you have anything to fear? When do you start getting in trouble?
I'll touch it at 8, 10 years old, I think.
About 10 years old.
Oh, then
When you start bucking, when you start thinking that I can change it, I'm going to change this, I can change this, I can, and try to go against the king, go against the rule. Now, I don't want to get in, I'm not getting into politics. I'm not even going to try to do that. But we have a system that we can change things through voting. There you go. Do I think we ought to get out there and ride on every? No, I don't. I just don't think we ought to. But that, there again, I'm not telling you what to do. I'm saying just don't mess with the king. You know, it'll go better for you if you don't mess with the king. But wickedness will not release those who practice it. Just like the woman and the man, that wickedness and that folly, if we serve God, we can hold on. But if we don't serve God, we'll practice sin, and sin will take us. I'm out of time, and I didn't get down to where I needed to be. So I don't know what we're going to do. Maybe we'll move on from there, maybe we'll not. So